In the final days, when mankind believed it had understood everything, the earth began to grow quiet. Scholars spoke of progress. Leaders promised a bright future. Yet the soul of the world was empty. Towers rose higher than the clouds. Satellites watched the skies. Armies of iron claimed to protect peace. And still, darkness grew inside the human heart. Love became an old rumor. Truth became a choice. Justice was negotiable, and compassion a sign of weakness. Men no longer sought God. They sought to replace him. And while humanity celebrated its own power, heaven began to close. The signs were everywhere. The climate shifted unpredictably. The seas roared against the shores. The stars shone with a strange glow. But people kept living as if nothing were happening. They said it was natural cycles, mere coincidences. They did not know that the silence of the heavens was the prelude to awakening. And then, time began to accelerate. Days grew shorter, nights restless. In the cities, people slept with fear without knowing why. The streets were full, but the hearts were empty. The whole world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something no one dared to name.
In my house, silence had also become routine. Since Mom passed away, my father spoke little, and when he did, his voice sounded as if it came from another time. He said the world had forgotten prayer, that no one stopped anymore to listen to the Spirit. I listened without truly hearing him. To me, they were just the words of a tired man. My mother had been the flame that kept prayer alive, but when she died, she left a silence in the house that even my father's faith could not fill. Every night he knelt beside the bed and whispered each of our names. I, on the other hand, thought wasting time praying was for the elderly. I had plans. I had dreams. I was in a hurry. I believed God could wait. Sometimes I would stare at the dining room clock, the one my father never stopped adjusting. He said keeping the right time was a symbol of order, of discipline, but over the years, that clock began to fall behind. At first, a few minutes, then entire hours, and no one understood why. When he noticed, he said something I will never forget. "Man's time is running out, daughter, and even the clocks don't want to keep counting it." I laughed at that phrase at the time. Today I know it was a warning.
For when love grows cold, judgment draws near. When men stop looking to the heavens, heaven prepares to speak. And though the earth groans under the weight of its errors, the eternal God still extends his hand, waiting for the child who chooses to return.
That night, I remember everything. The neighborhood radio repeated news about strange phenomena in different countries, but no one paid attention. Outside, dogs howled for no reason, and the streetlights flickered as if something were breathing through the wires. My father gathered us all in the living room and said it was time to pray. I didn't want to stay. It seemed exaggerated. I left the house with my phone in my hand and headphones on, ignoring his words. I walked without direction, looking at the city lights. Everything was the same. Bars open, people laughing, stores glowing. Nothing was out of place, and yet, deep inside, something pressed against my chest. When I returned, my father was still praying. I asked him if he didn't get tired of talking to someone who didn't answer. He just looked at me and said, "God is not silent, daughter. Sometimes it's you who isn't listening." That sentence was the first crack in my unbelief, but I still wasn't ready to understand.
And heaven kept silent, not because it had forgotten, but because humanity no longer wanted to hear. That silence was the final warning before the storm.
My father's name was Tomas. His hands were rough from so much work, and his eyes tired from looking to the sky so often, waiting for answers. Since Mom died, his gaze changed. He no longer spoke about the future, he spoke about promises. He said life was only a brief waiting period before something much greater. We listened to him with respect, but without faith. I had stopped believing in all of that. For as long as I can remember, I heard him say that one day everything would change, that the world would not remain the same forever. I used to laugh at those phrases. I thought they were stories to keep us obedient. Tales older people repeated so they wouldn't feel old. My mother, on the other hand, was tenderness and faith in one person. Every morning, she lit a candle by the window and prayed for everyone, even for those who had hurt her. I told her the world wasn't fixed with prayers, but with decisions. She smiled sadly, as if she knew that one day those words would come back against me. At home, there were 3 of us siblings. Joel, the youngest, was quiet and calm. Sometimes I found him secretly reading the Psalms. He said he found peace in them. I teased him. I told him he should go out more, have fun, stop being so spiritual. I never imagined that his quietness was strength, not weakness. The other was Adrian, the oldest, always in a rush, ambition in his eyes. He said he would soon leave the country, make money, build something big. Dad tried to speak to him about God, but Adrian would only reply, "That doesn't pay the bills, old man. Faith doesn't feed you." And Dad would fall silent, not out of fear, but out of pain. He knew words cannot push a heart that does not want to move.
Such are the days of the end. Children turn away from the Father's voice. Truth becomes an echo, and the love of many grows cold. Prayer, which once held homes together, becomes routine, and the daily bread is eaten without gratitude, as if life were a right and not a gift. Yet the Lord watches from above, waiting for a single flame to be rekindled in the midst of darkness.
That afternoon, Dad came home early from work. He had heard on the radio that something strange was happening in different cities. Lights falling from the sky, animals fleeing toward the hills, a deep hum no one could explain. He came into the house with a tense face. "Tonight we are going to pray together," he said firmly. Joel set down his book and hugged him. Adrian sighed impatiently. "I just said I was tired, that I had other things on my mind." Dad looked at me, and I knew something inside him was breaking. Not from anger, but from helplessness. "Daughter, don't let pride steal what is eternal," he whispered. I answered coldly, "Dad, we're not living in the times of Moses. No one is going to open the heavens. Everything that happens has a scientific explanation." He looked at me in silence, his eyes moist, and said the last thing I wanted to hear. "There are explanations only the soul understands, and yours no longer wants to listen." That night we had dinner in silence. Dad bowed his head and prayed alone, but Adrian did not lower his head. Joel gave thanks for the food, and I simply stared at my phone. Each of us seemed to be living in a different world, under the same roof.
When homes stop praying, the enemy's doors open. Evil does not enter with violence, but with indifference. First they laugh at faith, then they forget love, and finally, they no longer feel guilt for anything. Thus, the flame that once lit the house is extinguished.
After dinner, I locked myself in my room. I heard my father and my brother praying in low voices. My brother's voice trembled. My father's firm seemed to be fighting something invisible. I didn't know it then, but that was the last complete prayer that rose in our home. That night, without Mom's voice, the house felt colder than ever. And although Dad kept praying, no one responded anymore. Faith had become a widow along with him. That week, the news sounded like something out of a movie. They reported earthquakes in places where the ground had never shaken, skies turning red at dawn, and dead fish washing up on the shores of several countries.
Unexplained events are repeating in different nations.
Scientists are investigating.
No one imagined what was about to happen.
But what frightened my father the most were the meetings of world leaders. They showed them signing agreements for global peace, creating a single council to regulate the economy and communications. They called them alliances of unity, but Dad called them the prelude to the New World Order. I remember seeing him sitting in front of the television, the remote in his hand, saying in a low voice, "When the powerful unite in the name of peace, it's because war has already begun in the spirit." I answered, tired, "Dad, those are theories. The world is just trying to organize itself." He sighed. "The world cannot organize itself without God, daughter. When man believes he can govern the earth without answering to heaven, everything collapses, sooner or later." I didn't know how to reply. It hurt to see him so alone, so convinced of something I considered superstition.
And it shall come to pass that the nations will speak with one voice and raise one declaration, saying, peace and security. But then sudden destruction will come upon them, and they shall not escape. For power born from pride does not build, it corrupts. And agreements signed without truth will become chains.
That night, while the world watched the news, our house filled with a strange silence. Dad turned off the television, closed the curtains, and called the three of us. "Pray with me," he said. Adrienne stood up immediately. "Don't start with that again, Dad. I'm not going to pray because of your fears." Tomas did not answer. He just looked at him with a mix of sadness and tenderness. "I don't pray out of fear, son. I pray because love is the only thing that can still hold us together." I stood in the middle, unmoving. I didn't know which side to be on. My reason told me everything had an explanation. Climate change, crises, blackouts. But something in my chest tightened, as if a part of me recognized that something beyond science was moving. Joel took my father's hand and began to pray in a low voice. I will never forget that image. An old man and a child, both on their knees in the middle of a house that seemed to stop time. Adrienne left, slamming the door, and I went up to my room without saying a word. From the window, I saw the sky turn a metallic blue. The clouds seemed to move against the wind. The streetlights sparked, and in the distance there was a deep hum, as if something immense were breathing beneath the earth.
And there were signs in the sky and on the earth, thunder without storm, seas roaring, and men losing sleep. For heaven's clock was approaching its hour, and creation groaned, waiting for its redemption.
That was the first night I felt fear without reason. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. The air had a metallic smell, like rain and electricity. In the silence, sirens could be heard far away, and suddenly, the entire neighborhood went dark. Everything turned black. The hum grew louder, and then, total silence. I looked out the window. A line of light crossed the sky and disappeared behind the mountains. I didn't know if it was a meteor, a craft, or a sign. I only knew the world was no longer breathing the same. When I went downstairs, I found my father awake, sitting at the table with the Bible open. He looked at me and said with a trembling voice, "It has begun, daughter. What I told you, it has begun." And that was the first time I didn't know whether to believe him or be afraid of him. At 3:17, the digital clock flickered and went dark. I thought it was a power outage, but some lights were still on across the street. Something didn't add up. I called my father. Nothing. I knocked on the wall that separated my room from Joel's. Silence. Then I heard a dull noise downstairs, as if something had fallen. I went down with my phone in my hand, flashlight on. The house was cold. The candle Dad always kept lit had burned halfway down, and beside it, the open Bible's pages trembled, even though there was no wind. "Dad?" I called. "Joel?" No answer. My phone vibrated. Messages from the neighborhood group chat flooded in. Did anyone else hear that? There are screams on the avenue. Car alarms are going off by themselves. I looked out the window. Several lights in the neighborhood shut off at once. In the distance, a transformer exploded in a blue flash. I ran to the door. Outside, people were coming out of their houses. Some shouted names, others stared at the sky. The deep hum we had heard the night before returned, louder now, like a roar beneath the earth. Then came a crash. 2 cars collided at the corner. I ran toward them without thinking.
And in that day men shall run without direction. Their ears shall hear thunderings, and not know from where they come. For heaven will have opened its mouth, and the earth will answer with a groan.
Smoke poured from one of the vehicles. I hit the window. The driver wasn't there. Only his jacket. His phone still lit on the seat. The woman in the other car screamed for her daughter, but the back seat was empty. I froze. On the sidewalk, a bicycle rolled by itself, slowly falling as if time had slowed down. I looked at the sky. A line of white light cut through the clouds and vanished. A weight pressed on my chest, a vertigo, an impossible certainty. Something, or someone, had just crossed the boundary between this world and the other. I ran back home. The hum stopped. The silence left behind was worse. I entered calling for my father. The chair where he sat was empty, his cup still steaming. On the floor I found his cap and his rosary. I fell to my knees and screamed his name until my voice was gone.
And in the twinkling of an eye, those who kept the faith were lifted, and those who lived for themselves remained among shadows. Thus the ancient word was fulfilled: one shall be taken, and the other left. Two will be in the field, one taken, the other left. Two women grinding at the mill, one taken, the other left. Airplanes crossing the skies were left without pilots. In a single second, hundreds fell like burning stars, blazing in the night. The seas turned to fire as ships without direction crashed into one another. Entire highways became mountains of metal and smoke. In homes, the scenes were even more painful. A mother reached out to cover her sleeping child and found only an empty sheet. His small pajamas lay on the bed, still warm, as if sleep had returned him to heaven. In another house, a husband woke and touched the pillow beside him. His wife was gone. Only the shape of her body remained on the mattress and the echo of her perfume in the air. In the streets, chaos became weeping. People running without direction, empty cars crashing, sirens without drivers, doors left open. Columns of golden light rose above the city. Men and women were lifted among flashes, their faces filled with wonder and peace. Those who remained looked upward, stretching their hands, unable to reach them. Thus the world was divided in a single second. Half ascended in glory, the other half remained in ruin, and while heaven opened for some, the earth closed in on the rest. Cities, in one instant, filled with echo and emptiness. For those who loved the light were called, and those who loved the darkness awoke within it.
I don't know how long I stayed there, hugging empty air. Suddenly a blast shook the windows. I ran out again. The entire avenue was collapsed. Alarms, smoke, people running without knowing where. A bus had crashed into a pole. The driver was gone. In the middle of everything, a child cried alone. I picked him up. He was looking for his mother. I didn't have the courage to tell him he would probably never find her. As I tried to calm him, the sky turned the color of molten copper. In the distance, sirens wailed, and the news kept repeating one phrase: millions of people have disappeared worldwide. My hands trembled. A burning filled my chest, and a phrase crossed my mind like a whisper that wasn't mine. Time has stopped, but you are still here. That was when I understood. This was not an accident or a phenomenon. This was what my father spoke of every night with tears in his eyes. This was the rapture, and I had been left behind.
And heaven kept silence, not from indifference, but from justice. Those who despised mercy shall now know the truth among the ruins. The heartbeat of the world paused, and the echo of judgment began.
Dawn came, but the sun looked sick. A gray glow covered the city, as if the sky had been smeared with ash. I walked the streets without direction, the child I had rescued still in my arms, searching for a safe place. The sirens never stopped. News channels broadcast without pause, but their voices were pure confusion.
Millions of people missing simultaneously.
Governments call for calm.
Experts suggest it may be a quantum or extraterrestrial event.
No one knew anything. Social media collapsed. Phones stopped working. Highways were filled with abandoned vehicles. On the avenues, people screamed names. Others stole. Others knelt and wept. I saw men in suits trying to maintain control, but their faces betrayed them. They didn't understand either. In the Central Plaza, a group of young people burned papers and banners. They said the government had planned it, that it was a purge, an experiment, global manipulation. No one listened. No one listened to anyone.
And the earth was filled with confusion. Men sought human explanations for a divine event. The wise spoke in vain. Leaders gathered without power, and nations cried out for a new order that would restore their peace.
By midday, news channels began broadcasting an international announcement. On every screen appeared the same image: a vast hall filled with flags and delegates. Faces were grave, speeches cold. A spokesperson, with a rehearsed voice, declared,
From this moment on, all countries will operate under a World Council of Unity and Security. This phenomenon has no religious explanation. It is a natural planetary shift, and we must adapt as one humanity.
My heart tightened. It didn't sound like comfort, but surrender. Control. The crowd applauded desperately, like people clinging to a lie just to avoid fear. Dad always said the greatest deception wouldn't come from hell, but from humanity's desire to feel safe without God. Now I understood.
And they will see a power rise that promises order, a voice that offers salvation without a cross. The peoples will follow it, and in the name of peace they will surrender their freedom. But the price will be their soul.
The city sank into chaos. Stores were looted, hospitals overwhelmed, highways filled with people fleeing without knowing where. The child I carried found his aunt among the survivors and ran to her. I watched him disappear into the smoke, and for a moment, I felt relief, until the ground shook. A long metallic sound spread across the sky. It wasn't thunder, nor an airplane. It vibrated inside the chest. People fell to the ground, covering their ears. Some said it was a signal from extraterrestrials. Others said the planet was splitting apart. I only knew it was the echo of something spiritual, like a call that was no longer for me. I took shelter in a building, and from a window watched the sky fill with drones and helicopters. Screens on the walls broadcast the same slogan in every language: unity, security, global hope. And beneath it, a new symbol, a kind of circle with a flame at the center.
And they will worship the image of power, for hope will have become a commodity. Those who once despised faith will now trust the system that binds them.
I turned on my phone one last time. Dozens of unread messages, all the same. Where are you? They're gone. Help me. And at the top, one final voice message from my father I had never listened to. If one day you wake up and I'm not there, don't be afraid. It wasn't me who left you, daughter. It was you who chose to stay. But if you still have breath, seek him. There is still time. I wept with a shattered soul. The screens announced the birth of a new world. But inside me, something broke. For the first time, I felt hunger for what I had despised all my life.
And even in the midst of chaos, mercy whispers. For while the heart still beats, forgiveness may yet be found. Heaven will not fully close its doors until the last repentant tear touches the earth.
Days have passed, though I no longer know how to count them. There are no clocks, no schedules, only gray dawns and nights that feel too long. The city has become an echo. The news still talks about the World Council, the new regulations, the identification chip they will begin using to guarantee security and sanitary control. They say it is temporary, that everything will return to normal. But I know nothing will ever be the same. I walk through the streets and see empty temples, houses shut with photos taped to the doors, looted markets, bodies covered with blankets. Those who once mocked faith now wander with hollow eyes, searching for answers where hope no longer lives. Those who remain murmur prayers they don't even understand. It's as if the soul of the world were learning to breathe again. Deep in my heart, I still hear my Father's voice. If you still have breath, seek Him. Sometimes I look at the sky and think of my Father, of the way His hands trembled when He prayed, and how His voice said my name as if it were the last time. I know He is gone. I feel it in every silence, and I know Joel went with Him. That empty bed, that wooden cross on the pillow, it wasn't abandonment, it was victory. God took them because they were ready, and though it hurts, I prefer to imagine them together, free, smiling in the heaven He longed for. At first I thought I wouldn't have the strength, but one day, among smoke and ruins, I found the neighborhood church. The doors were open. Inside, a few people were weeping in silence. I knelt for the first time in years, not knowing what to say. I didn't ask for explanations or miracles. I only whispered, "If you still hear me, don't leave me like this." There were no thunderclaps or lights, only a calm that moved through my chest. For a moment, I knew I was not alone. I knew that even after judgment, mercy was still breathing in the shadows.
And even in the days of sorrow, the voice of the Eternal still calls. For as it was written in the ancient scrolls, mercy precedes judgment, and love remains where hope was buried. The righteous shall be taken up before the day of fire, and their dwelling shall be kept among the stars. For the faith of the humble is stronger than the walls of kingdoms.
Today I understand that I was not left behind for punishment, but for purpose. Perhaps my task is to tell what I saw. Perhaps my voice will help someone not make the same mistake. I look at the sky every night, hoping to see what Dad saw. Sometimes I think I glimpse a light blinking, faint but steady. Maybe it's a star, maybe a reminder. If anyone hears this recording, don't waste time. Don't wait for signs, speeches, or miracles. Don't cling to what the world offers. Everything we thought was solid collapsed in an instant. The end was not destruction, but warning. God's love did not leave with those who ascended. It still lingers, waiting to be heard by those of us who remain. I have walked among the ruins of human pride and seen what remains when the soul is emptied. Now I know faith was not religion. It was refuge. Prayer was not routine. It was life. And though heaven seems closed, a whisper can still be heard. That whisper says, "Return."
Thus, what was spoken of old is fulfilled. In the last days, I will pour out my Spirit upon the broken, and even those who fled will hear my voice again. For love has no ending. Time is not punishment, but a door.
I lift my eyes. Through the smoke and distance, I see a figure walking among the ruins. It's Adrian. He's alive. He walks aimlessly, his face lost among the shouting crowd. For a moment our eyes meet. He recognizes me, but he doesn't come closer. He only watches me, with the same pride mixed with fear he had the last time we argued. And before I can say a word, a wave of people pulls him away. I stand still. I know he is alive, but I also know his heart is still asleep, and I understand this is not the end, but the beginning of something the world still does not understand.
One shall be taken and another left. One will believe in life, another in the midst of judgment.
I don't know how much longer this world will endure, but now I have peace. If he allowed me to remain, it was to understand that faith is not imposed, it is discovered. that the end is not punishment, but a calling, and that while the heart still beats, there is still time.